Gary Player is the greatest international player to ever play the game. He's one of 4 men to win all of golf's professional major championships. He's the man in black, a winner in 5 decades. Meet Gary Player tonight on Golf Talk Live. Welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm Peter Kessler. Long before we realized how important physical fitness was to playing world-class golf, Gary Player was putting himself through rigorous daily workouts. 25 years before sports psychologists became indispensable, Gary Player understood that great players must develop and possess an array of mental skills to work hand in hand with their physical ones. He appreciated the benefits of diet, of intense short game practice, and explored the mystique of experimenting with different shaft and club head compositions before these things became the rage. His record as a champion and as a man mark Player as one who was ahead of his time, a great man of his time, and one of the great players of all time. He's traveled more miles in pursuit of excellence than any athlete in the history of sports. He has tirelessly pursued excellence in his game, in the condition of his body, and in the strength of his mind. Gary Player has won tournaments for 42 years in every corner of the world, under every imaginable circumstance. 9 majors, 7 Australian Opens, 5 World Match Play Championships, 13 South African Opens. He's won in Manila, in Brazil, in Chile, in Spain, in Ireland. Wherever tournaments are held, Gary Player has been there, adapted to the conditions, and won. He raises racehorses, runs a school for children, owns an equipment company, and then gives more back to the game that has given him his life. He's won when ahead, when impossibly behind. And even when a tournament win is out of reach, there he is, bearing down, grinding, saving strokes, and making sure that his toughest critic, himself, is convinced that every conceivable effort has been made to fight for victory. What a great pleasure to see you again.
Thanks, Peter. It's exactly 1 year, isn't it?
You'll be 1 year tomorrow.
That's right. Well, you're doing a lot better now, aren't you?
Well, you are too. You're the only guy who always looks a year younger after each visit. I mean, I can't believe that you're 60. You're going to be the first guy to get off the planet alive.
Oh, I hope you're right. Keep talking about it.
Since I saw you last, so many incredible things happened. A doctorate from St. Andrews University, I think the oldest university in Great Britain, founded in 1410. What was that about?
Well, that was one of the greatest moments of my career, something that you had to experience to believe, going through the town dressed up in all their paraphernalia. You know, the British really have the pomp and ceremony, which I happen to like very much.
I knew that.
And, you know, with my grandparents coming from Scotland, Ferguson was their name, going through the little town of St. Andrews, the people of Scotland, or in St. Andrews, really appreciate golf and golfers, with the bagpipes going, and then going into this hall at this university, as you sounded so correctly said, was founded in 1410, that everybody had been trained in the meantime, and it was packed out to sing a couple of songs. And you walk in there and you hear this applause echoing, and then you sort of knighted to a degree. It is just an experience I'll never forget, and particularly in Scotland, the home of golf that I love and adore, because I started my first British Open ever in 1955, and my last British Open will be at St. Andrews, God willing, in the year 2000. In fact, Bob Charles and I both agreed it will be our last British Open there.
I don't believe that for a second. You're going to play forever. You know, speaking of St. Andrews, like Bobby Jones, you didn't care for it much the first time round, did you?
No, I thought they spoilt a good marsh. It was I played there once with a pair of white pants, white leg and black leg, and I'll never forget teeing off the first tee. I played with Arnold Palmer that day, and I signed a picture in the golf exhibition, the Golf PGA show just the other day. And there were these fogies, these old guys sitting in the clubhouse, only 5 yards away, and the one guy said, "James Braid, would turn in his grave if he saw this wee laddie, what he's doing to the royal grund, the royal ground, you know. Fancy ting off with one leg brown and black and the other one white. I can't believe it.
What would he have thought had he known that you had slept in one of the bunkers at St. Andrews on your first trip over there?
Well,
He'd have rolled over again?
Well, maybe he'd done that himself at some time or other, because nobody starts off rich unless you inherit it, you know.
Last year, when you won in Kentucky, the bank won with a final round 64, 8 birdies, no bogeys to blow away the same guys you've been blowing away for 40 years. It was a certain symmetry to it, wasn't it? Having won your first tournament in this country in 1958 in Kentucky, being a horse breeder. Tell me a little bit about how that felt in terms of those things coming together and the 37 years that had passed since that first victory.
Well, Peter, you know, there's so much in the mind that we haven't even scratched the surface of. There's nothing new, in spite of what the public are being told. There's absolutely nothing new in the golf swing whatsoever. I'm dying to hear of just one thing that is new in the golf swing that I haven't heard in the last 44 years. In fact, Ben Hogan knows a lot of things that we don't even know probably today. So let's not kid ourselves about the golf swing. The mind is something we haven't scratched the surface of. We've probably got to first base, if we may make a comparison to baseball. We've got to first base with the mind. The body, we're only halfway to the first base. So that's another thing we've got to think about. But why I'm talking and relating this to the mind, because I won my first tournament in Kentucky in the United States. Louisville, or should I say Lexington, Kentucky, is my favorite spot in the United States because I like and enjoy horses and breeding of horses more than I love golf and ranching. So, you know, that's my great love. Golf is my number 2 love. But only through golf am I able to do that, so I'm not forgetting that. So I win my first tournament in Louisville. I then go to Lexington, win a senior tournament in Lexington with all my horse breeding friends there, which was just terrific. And then to go back last year, just before I turned 60, and shoot 64 the last day and win the tournament, it was a dream, particularly to beat Raymond Floyd and Aoki, who are playing so well.
You've always been noted as being first in a number of ways. You're really the first on tour to explore the fitness of your body, to work on your mind, to prepare your short game intensely. I've always wondered, where did you find the strength to find the discipline to do all of those things? I wonder, did it come from your 2-handicapper dad, your mom who died too young, from within, or from your God?
I think everything comes from God. Anytime you kid yourself that it comes from you, you're dreaming. You know, it's a very hard thing to work this out. I think the fact being small is a great advantage. You know, a lot of people say, gee, imagine what you would have done if you were as strong as Arnold Palmer or Jack Nicklaus. I wouldn't have done as well. You see, it made me hungry. It made me go to the gym and work out, and that in itself gives you a sense of appreciation, a sense of you have to keep trying. I think the fact that you are small, you have to use your mind better, you have to watch your diet. It makes you do things that you wouldn't have done had you been big and strong. So it's very hard to answer that. I think when my mother died and my father's working underground, 12,000 feet in the mine, not making $100 a month, of course that was a long time ago, traveling to school by tram and bus for an hour and a half back, getting home and there's nobody there to give you that love that one needs as a youngster. It makes you determined to say, listen, I don't want to be poor. I want to do well, and I'm going to work my butt off to do it. And so I don't know where it comes from, but I've got to give God the credit, because a talent is only loaned to you. It's not given to you on a permanent basis. So I am so grateful for my career to have done so well. I love golf, I love people, I love travel. I've traveled so much, really. It's quite incredible when you think where I've traveled in my career without jets. You know what amazes me today? They offer a young man, and I find this hard to comprehend. They offer a young pro today $100,000 to go and play somewhere across the world. He says, gee, I'm tired, you know, I've had a tough year. $100,000? Man, I get in a boat and row over for that. And I mean, you know, if you think of the average man in the street today, he can't comprehend that somebody turns that kind of money down. I think athletes, quite honestly, are being paid too much money. And I think the bubble is going to burst in time. I don't think it can go on paying people $50 million and $20 million. I hope it does for their sake, but I don't think it will.
If they were going to hold the Antarctica Polar Capped Open tomorrow, you would take a raft and go, wouldn't you? We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with the youngster Gary Player right after this. If you want to talk to him, 1-800-842-9987. In 1961, Gary Player became the first international player to win the Masters and had the pleasure of Arnold Palmer helping him on with his first green jacket. He earned his second title in 1974, which he sealed with a 9-iron approach to within 6 inches on the 17th hole for a title-clinching birdie over Tom Weiskopf and Dave Stockton. His most brilliant Masters victory he saved for last. In 1978, the 42-year-old international superstar trailed by 7 strokes with the final round yet to be played. His front 9 34 gained little ground on the leaders, but his 6th birdie back 930 vaulted him to the top of the leaderboard. 3 men came to the 18th hole with a chance to tie. But when the dust had settled, the cheering began for the greatest international. In 1961, Gary Player became the first international player to win the Masters and had the pleasure of Arnold Palmer helping him on with his first green jacket. He earned his second title in 1974, which he sealed with a 9-iron approach to within 6 inches on the 17th hole for a title-clinching birdie over Tom Weiskopf and Dave Stockton. His most brilliant Masters victory he saved for last. In 1978, the 42-year-old international superstar trailed by 7 strokes with the final round yet to be played. His front 9 34 gained little ground on the leaders, but his 6 birdie back 9 30 vaulted him to the top of the leaderboard. 3 men came to the 18th hole with a chance to tie, but when the dust had settled, the cheering began for the greatest internationalist of them all, Gary Player. One of the great things about the 78 win, of course, was that you were playing with a young Seve Ballesteros, who, after you hold your final birdie on 18, a birdie you knew you needed, he was more excited than you. And the next week at the Tournament of Champions, and of course you were 7 behind going into the last round of the Masters, the following week at the Tournament of Champions at La Costa, you're 7 behind again, and who, of course, was in first place 7 shots ahead? Seve, who had spent the weekend with you the week before. What do you suppose his reaction was as you were creeping up that leaderboard?
Well, wasn't that nice, the enthusiasm that he had when I won the Masters? And after all, enthusiasm is one of the great essences of life. And I must say, you know, it says in the Bible that in the book of Proverbs, that you must enjoy the success of others, because when you have success, you want them to enjoy your success. And that's so true. And so I really appreciated the warmth in which he received me when I won the tournament. If you saw the hug that he gave me.
I did.
And he went on to such great heights and did so well. And he said to me one day, he said, you know, when I play with you that last time, you teach me how to win Masters. And I said, well, that's great, and you'll go on to win it a few times, which he has. And it's quite sad that a man who's charismatic as he is having these difficulties with his game that he is having.
But despite those, he still, even as recently as the Ryder Cup last year, did the same thing with his teammates that he did with you. He was able to share in their joy.
Absolutely. He's actually a very dynamic man, Ballesteros.
Let's let some of our viewers have a chance to talk with you. William in Alabama, please say hi to Gary Player.
Hello, Mr. Player. It's good to see you tonight.
Thank you, sir.
And also, Peter, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Mr. Player, I'd like to ask you a question about your major championship wins. I'd like to know which one is the most memorable to you and why.
Well, I think the British Open is definitely the most difficult major championship to win because of the elements that you're playing against. You know, you might play at 7 o'clock in the morning and the sun is shining, and then in the afternoon you play, and you're playing in a 45-mile-an-hour wind. So you know it's a matter of battling the elements, and also your mind again, without feeling sorry for yourself and saying, well, so-and-so Palmer had a beautiful morning, and here I'm playing in the wind and rain and got my waterproofs on. You've got to buckle down and get in there and try and win. The best organized tournament in the world is the Masters at Augusta. There's nothing that compares to it. The US Open, well, it's America. That's wonderful. The PGA, we're all proud to be PGAs. To say one, I don't know. But when I won the US Open, which enabled me to win the Grand Slam after Gene Sarris and Ben Hogan, I was the third man to do it, had a very special time in my heart because that closed the door.
Josh, you're on Golf Talk Live.
Hi, I enjoy your tutelage, Gary. I was just wondering, who encouraged you to start playing golf?
Well, my father, who was a miner, used to play over the weekends on the mine golf course, and he invited me to go out and play, and I'm so pleased that I did, because through golf I ended up with a wonderful association with my dad.
You know, one of the things that people don't know about you is that one of the reasons you hung around the game in your early years was because of a certain young lady who was the daughter of a head professional nearby. Tell us about that.
Well, I met my wife when I was 14. We've been married for 39 years this January. And my love grows for her, and it's a great thing. You're asking me very choky questions now. But
I've had a year to get ready for you.
I've been very lucky in the wife that I've chosen, because no woman would really enjoy being married to me. You know, me always saying goodbye, traveling like I do, and always saying goodbye to the children and the grandchildren. It's been a big sacrifice. It's been worth it, and it's been wonderful, but it is an enormous sacrifice that no American player will ever understand.
But you always go home again and say, I'm here.
Yeah, but you know, when you're that far away, you know, if you want to go home next week, you just cannot do it. You know, it's not that easy.
Well, given all the miles that you've put on, that's right. We're going to say hello to Paul. How are you tonight?
Okay. Hi, this is Paul. Mr. Player, pleasure. I saw you at the Open in '74. You played wonderfully. Wet sand. How do you develop the game for wet sand bunkers? Thank you.
Develop the game for wet bunkers, was that the question?
Yes.
Well, what you do when you're in a wet bunker, you don't hit as hard as you would in soft sand. You swing a little easier, and you use a bit more finesse, because the club is going to hit the ground on the hard ground and accelerate, so the ball is going to be inclined to go further. So you make the pin a little shorter. But there's a little thing called practice that you've got to get in there and try yourself.
You mentioned the '74 Open, of course, at Royal Lytham in St. Anne's, where it will be played later this year. What's your strongest memory of the 3-birdie finish when you shot the 68 in the second round in what appeared to be pretty impossible conditions?
Well, you know, Lytham and St. Anne's is a type of golf course that is so foreign to American players. I mean, you go in the British Open there and you hit the ball in the bunker, and you've got to play the ball out backwards. I'll never forget Hale Irwin. When I won the British Open in '74, I played my first round with Hale, and he was, if I'm not mistaken, the US Open champion.
That's right.
And he said to me, he said, laddie, he said, you know, this is like playing on the moon. He says, I've never seen anything like this. And I said to him, I said, Hale, this is the examination paper that is put in front of you. When you were at college, you never knew what examination paper was going to be put in front of you. I said, this is it. And, you know, he's a wonderful golfer and is able to accept that challenge. But it's a different game of golf, you know. I was playing with Arnold Palmer in the British Open Seniors at Lytham, and I got in the bunker, and the ball was right next to the bunker. I went on my knees, and I was on my knees, and the ball was way down like that. I hit it. The ball went up to the green, and as I hit it, I fell down into the bunker and left the hole this deep, and I was lying there with a sore shoulder, and Arnold said, get out the way, here comes the ball back again. Came running down, fell right in the same hole, and I looked at Arnold, and he was standing there like this, and I looked at him, and I started to laugh, and he started to laugh, and I could hardly go and play my next shot. We were giggling so much. But these are experiences you never have anywhere else in the world other than Scotland.
We ended to appreciate Hale Irwin's remark. He had won the Open the month before at Wingfoot, shooting 7 over, and that's not exactly an easy golf course. So really puts his remark about how difficult Royal Lytham was in perspective.
That's right.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Gary Player on Golf Talk Live. Four men have won all 4 professional majors in their careers. Their names are engraved on trophies from the US Open, the British Open, the PGA Championship, and the Masters. The first man to achieve the feat was the Squire, Gene Sarazen, who won the 1935 Masters to assure himself of being the first to accomplish the career slam. 18 years later, Ben Hogan won the 1953 British Open, and the only time he would play in the event, to become the second man to win all 4 in a career. 12 years passed, and Gary Player won the 1965 US Open to notch his spot in one of the most exclusive clubs in sports. Soon after, the Golden Bear, Jack Nicklaus, won the 1966 British Open to become the 4th man to win all 4 professional majors. Now, 29 years have passed without a new member to this magnificent group of men. Will there ever be another man to accomplish the feat? 2 players come to mind, Gary, that might be able to be the 5th man to accomplish the feat. One, Tom Watson, who needs a PGA and who is playing some of the best golf of his life right now. And at the other end of the spectrum, young Ernie Els. What's your reaction?
Well, if Tom Watson's playing the best golf of his life, why isn't he winning?
because he can't seem to make the crucial putts deep into the weekend. He seems to get Thursday and Friday and halfway through Saturday, and then the 3 and 4 footers start to elude him, and I think it's an issue of confidence.
Then you're not playing the best golf of your life, because to play the best golf of your life, you're doing everything well. And this is a very talented man. I never saw many more people with a great flair than Tom Watson had, and it's very sad that a man that could play that well and was such a phenomenal putter, not a good putter. What is it? And, you know, I've never read, what is it? And this has happened to quite a few guys. There are about 5 guys that this has happened to, that he's so great with the putter, virtually wakes up one day and doesn't putt well anymore. What is that? Ernie Els? What a golf swing. I think that Ernie Els is the best young golfer in the world today. I think he's got the best looking swing. If he has the desire, I think he will definitely do it.
Tom Watson is hitting the ball better than he ever has before and keeps knocking on the door. He finds himself in contention in majors, in tournaments that you would rank just under, and that's why I say he's playing the best. He hasn't closed anything out for a long time, but I think given that he's won the other 3 and the fact that he's playing good golf except for the putter on the weekend, but a year ago he wasn't putting well on Thursdays and Fridays, and he keeps each week taking that deeper into his round.
Well, he's a great asset to golf, and if he could win the Grand Slam, it would be a wonderful thing for golf. But I'm afraid I'm not a man who believes in ifs and ands. It's like if you go through the history of golf, America's always had superstars. You can go back to Gene Sarazen, Walter Hagen, and who was the other man that played in their time?
Bobby Jones.
Bobby Jones. And then you had, in the next era, you had Sam Snead, Ben Hogan, and Byron Nelson, and Jimmy DeMeritt.
Absolutely.
American golfers I'm talking about. Then came along Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Lee Trevino. This is the first time in the history of American golf that you don't have a superstar. The superstars now are the Tom Watsons, are the Greg Normans, and players from overseas now. There's been a great change in the pendulum, and this will always happen. And now you'll find in years to come, America will get superstars and the rest of the world won't happen. But it's very interesting. You have a lot of players knocking at the door, like Mickelson, great talent, Fred Couples, Corey Pavin is a little bulldog. I love the way he plays golf. The way he won the $1 million tournament this year at our golf course in South Africa, I was so impressed. But you haven't got anybody yet that is a superstar at this moment. It's quite interesting what happens in the pendulum with golf, isn't it?
The rest of the world has caught up.
Well, you know, a lot of people in America, you take even on the senior tour now, there's John Bland from South Africa. He's played in 4 tournaments, he's won 2 and almost won 3 out of 4. Nobody'd ever heard of John Bland. But, you know, people had been insular and had played in their home countries, and I think people in America are realizing how many great players have come from the rest of the world. But you also have players that are insular in the United States, guys who do very well in the United States, but send them to play in other countries, they're very ordinary players. That's why I take my hat off to internationals like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson and Lee Trevino, etc. They have really contributed to the game and have been great ambassadors for the United States and also for the great game of golf.
And you, sir, are the greatest internationalist of them all. Let's go ahead and let Jim ask you a question. How are you tonight, Jim?
Hi, how you doing? Great show, Peter. Mr. Player, I just want to thank you for what you've done, what you've given the game, and what you motivated, just like you tell it like it is. And I appreciate the regular tour professional and what they've gone through to achieve to what the status they are. But what I really want to get to you about is golf architecture. You know, you've built some great courses here in South Carolina, but what do you look for when you're building golf courses? That's basically my question.
Well, it's quite a sore point with me. My company's never given much recognition in the United States with the golf courses we're building, and yet we've probably built more golf courses than any architect living today in the world, or certainly as many. By the end of this year, we'll have done 140 golf courses and have built some very significant golf courses in the world. What we're looking for is playability for the member. That's the most important thing. He's got to go out there and enjoy it. These architects that are building these greens that are undulating and sloping and slick, they're not architects as far as I'm concerned, because we as professionals cannot handle that. The member has no chance. He walks there off the green with his tail between his legs, 4 putting greens, and not having fun. Beauty is another thing. You've got to make that golf course beautiful. People are living in this world now under pressure. when they go and play golf, they want to enjoy themselves and enjoy nature. Golf is a gift to nature. The other thing is playability, and a golf course for all seasons that a hacker can play, but at the same time, you've got to have the talent to build a golf course that the best player in the world can play. It's got to have elasticity.
What about, tell us very briefly about the 36-hole public course you built on top of a mountain, the only public course in the Hong Kong area.
It's called Khao Sao Chow on this particular mountain where the British did their bombing during the war. And we built 36 holes public golf course there. And it's so terrific to see these Chinese people having the opportunity, the average man in the street, to go and be able to play golf. Because they have one club there, the Royal Hong Kong, and it costs you $1.5 million to be a member. You wait 16 years to be a member. Eventually they phone you up and they say, Peter, you're now accepted. Your wife says he died 3 years ago. Are you kidding?
And when
So I'm a great believer in building more public golf courses. I was a poor guy. Most of us were. Look at Arnold Palmer. He didn't have any money. Or Trevino. Let's give people a chance to play golf without having to be. We've got enough country clubs. Let's build more public golf courses for the people.
We're going to take a short break for our cast of thousands that happens to be in the studio tonight. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back in just a moment with Gary Player. Gary Player is the only player in this century to win the British Open in 3 different decades. In 1959, at the age of 24, he won his first title at Muirfield in Scotland, one of the most demanding and storied courses in the British Open rotation. In 1968, in impossible conditions at brutal Carnoustie, he earned his second title. In 1974, at historic Royal Lytham and St. Anne's in England, he dominated the field and the course to win by 4 shots. Player always believed that a physically and mentally fit golfer could win tournaments for 5 decades, and his senior British Open titles in 1988 and 1990 proved his point conclusively. In 1994, Player was inducted, quite appropriately, into the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St. Andrews. Speaking of Vivian, I don't want you to get choked up, but I would have been, had I been her, when you called her from Carnoustie in '68 in South Africa and said, darling, could you please fly my putter up here? Now, that thing had been in retirement for a while, right?
That's right. I put it in solitary confinement for a while, but I realized that was the one.
And you've been using it ever since again, haven't you?
Most of the time. I have tried different putters from time to time, but most of the time, and I'm using it right now.
That's what you call a good wife. Let's go ahead and talk to Harold. Hello, Harold.
Mr. Player.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, for many, many years of great golf and providing us with so many hours of fun and entertainment. Peter, you got a great show. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Mr. Player, your spiritual mind has helped you in the game of golf, and I know that any man that is as close to the spirit as you are got to be a good golfer. I also was a friend of one of your former caddies, a guy by the name of Rabbit. Rabbit was from down south, and I got to know him very well in Augusta. I was there in 1978 when you win that tournament. Just want to know what happened to Rabbit. Haven't heard from him in a long time, and just let us know how much he helped you in your golf game. Thank you very much, sir.
Great pleasure. Thank you, sir. Rabbit was one of the greatest associations I ever had with a caddy in my life. In fact, he wasn't my caddy, he was my friend. Rabbit caddied for me for 17 years. He was the first black man to caddy in the British Open, and I was very proud to be part of that. Rabbit came down to South Africa during the very difficult times of the apartheid era, and he played a very vital role, the same as Lee Elder did. They were great contributors to society and teaching people you don't fight fire with fire. Just as our great President Nelson Mandela, who is the greatest statesman on this earth today and a man who's bringing people together. He spent 27 years in jail and has no bitterness, no militancy, only genuine love for people. These are great contributors to society.
Wasn't Rabbit also a great comedian in '74 as you had the big lead coming up the last hole?
Man.
Didn't he say, Ray Charles could win from here, try to relax Gary?
Well, I didn't want to look at the scoreboard every few holes, and I just sort of concentrating so hard, and I forgot about looking at the scoreboard because I was so intense on getting birdies. And I said, well, what do you think? Can we win it from here? He says, win it, man. He says, Ray Charles can win it from here.
That would relax anybody.
But he really was a character. He was the Muhammad Ali of golf. He really had a great sense of humor, and he was always happy. And you know, happiness is contagious.
Let's go ahead and talk to Todd. Hello, Todd. You're on Golf Talk Live.
Hi, Peter.
Yes,
we
sir.
love you, man.
We love you
Gary,
too.
You're the original Man in Black. Forget Dale Earnhardt. My question is, could someone who's, I know you were winning championships, you were a champ at 24, could someone who starts at 25 or 30 years old ever dream to be a pro?
Very much so, sir. Larry Nelson started at a very late age. Calvin Peete started at a very late age. Both did extremely well. Larry Nelson's won major championships. You can do anything that you put your mind to it, you know. If you really want something badly enough, be careful, you'll get it. If you have the determination to do it, you can do it. You're going to see amazing things happen in this earth and this time, particularly young people. My grandchildren's children are going to see people live to 130 years of age.
Yeah, you.
I don't know about me, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm going to that gym and working out, and I'm pumping a lot of iron as hard as I've ever done. It's amazing what you can do. You know, this business of getting old is in your mind. It's a number. If you go to certain parts in the world, they don't know how many, they don't associate age with numbers. They associate age with how they feel, and if they feel well, they're young. And isn't that the truth?
Absolutely. And every time that you show up, I feel older, which is not good. Who are we going to talk to? Herb. How are you, Herb?
Hello.
Hello, Herb.
Hello. Peter, first of all, I've subscribed to the Golf Channel for about 2 weeks. It is fabulous beyond belief. Thanks.
I will pass it along. Thank
Mr.
you.
Player, you mentioned the putter a moment ago, and I'd like you to expand on that. Would you tell that wonderful story again, how you got it, where you got it, what kind is it, do you still have it?
Well, I don't want to mention the country. It's a little unfair to that particular country, and I happen to love that country very much indeed and respect them. But Arnold Palmer and I were playing in a golf tournament overseas, and this putter was in a barrel in the store, and it had a $5 tag on it. So I said to Arnold, gee, I love this putter. It's got some nice loft on it. He says, well, put it back. Let's go and look at some more at the bottom of the store. So we went to the bottom of the store. But in the meantime, the salesman had heard me say I loved it. And I came back and I said, I'm getting this putter. And I took it out. There was a 6 in front of the 5. Now, I mean, there's a hang of a salesman for you. I wish I could employ some in my golf equipment company like that.
Speaking of which, why don't you tell us what's going on with Gary Player Equipment?
Well, we're really excited. We have different irons completely. We have aluminum bronze, which is the softest metal in the world, that are really good looking, that are gold color. We have a titanium oversized driver. We have come out now with these par savers and wedges that are oversized. And my new driver, I tell you one thing, it's changed my career. For my age of 60, I'm really hitting the ball now a minimum. And I always thought it was hogwash when I heard this. Lee Trevino came out with a driver that was hitting 25 yards further. And I said, Lee, if I could hit the ball 25 yards further with that driver, I'll give you $1 million right now. Well, I have a driver that I am hitting at 25 yards further, and thank goodness it's my driver that we've manufactured. It's titanium, it's oversized, lightweight shaft. Where is this game going to end? The golf courses are going to become obsolete for professionals in time to come. I mean, for the amateur golfers and the weekend players, that's fine. But I think they've got to start putting some kind of a stop on what's happening. Otherwise, golf courses are going to become obsolete.
Well, we know we have the president of the USGA, Judy Bell, who's going to be joining us in a little while, and she's going to tell us why things really haven't changed that much except for the players. And on her watch and on the watches that follow, they're going to continue to make sure or make their best attempt that equipment conforms to standards that won't make our golf courses obsolete.
Well, I don't believe that, you see, and neither do any of the professionals. We just do not believe that at all, because when they start telling me, whether it's a USG or RNA, who I have great respect for, when they start telling me that square grooves don't make a difference, then I can tell you one thing, they are 100% wrong, because I'm there in the rough sometimes with a square groove, and I used to fly the ball out of there at 100 miles an hour, and I'm hitting that ball out of there with no flyers now. And all the players agree. You can take a ball now and you can hit it, and you can see the paint on the club face. You can hit, there it is. You can see that ball. All these people watching here tonight see a ball, and all our listeners hit the green and suck way back. We never saw that when we were playing as young people. You're going to tell me that I could hit the ball the distance with a driver that I had when I was a young man, that I could hit it as far as I can hit it now? I hit it, this driver will hit it 40 yards further than the drivers I used to use. This is a fact. We're going by feel. We're not going by machines and what people are telling you in stats. We're going by feel and what's actually happening.
Now I understand why that's the driver that your wife found you in bed with. You slept with that club, didn't you? Tell the truth.
Well, I tell you one thing, I got into a lot of trouble with that driver, saying if I had to choose between my wife and that driver, what a fool I was. But anyway, I've since made up and did a lot of bowing, raised the salary, and a lot of flowers sent.
You better not need a club from South Africa soon. We're going to take a short break. We will be right back with Gary Player right after this. Only 3 men stood under par when the final round of the 1990 PGA Senior Championship began: Trevino, Nicklaus, and Player. The clock had turned back to battlefields past, where these 3 magnificent warriors have met for years. The final round matchup began with a flurry of birdies. No surprise, given that these are 3 of the greatest players of all time. With 5 holes to play, Player was 5 strokes ahead when Mother Nature decided to interrupt the contest. When the championship resumed, Player made it a closer contest. Finally, with his lead down to 2 strokes, he sank the last putt in the last light of day to become the 1990 PGA Senior Champion. I mean, if that isn't proof that this is game for a lifetime, nothing is. Here you are beating heads against the same guys you've been beating heads with basically your whole professional career. How much has the feeling of competition between you and Jack changed, if at all, over that time period?
I don't think it's changed at all with Jack or Arnold or Trevino. We all have great respect for each other, but we all want to beat each other. We all want to win, and we all appreciate that. And at the same time, we can be good friends and compliment each other when we're doing well. But isn't this something that young people should be really paying attention and seeing what's actually happening in this wonderful game of golf? Because there's this massive boom throughout the world. What other sport? I played golf with Michael Jordan the other day. In 2 or 3 years' time, he's finished with basketball. What is he going to do? He's going to play golf. All these football players being thumped and dumped all over the place and not living very long because they're bionic men, they're not going to have sports to play. They're going to have to go to golf. I played with Ivan Lendl. Young man, 30-something, finished with tennis. Golf, you're getting into your prime when these other guys are finishing. Young guys should really think very carefully what sport they're going to play. And golf is played everywhere in the world, and it's a challenge that you'll never conquer. It's a game you have to have respect for. You have to have respect for it. And it's a game you have to love. It's actually a disease. And a 36 handicapper can beat the best player in the world. And let me tell you, I've just got to take this opportunity of telling you, I've been a professional now for 44 years. I've done television interviews all over the world, from China to Africa to the United States. I have never been on any TV show like this Golf Channel. I can tell you this, that I had young guys at the PGA show when we were there with our equipment this year come up to me and say, Mr. Player, you know, I never had a chance to ever see you and Arnold Palmer when you were young guys. I never had that pleasure. And he says, now through the Golf Channel, I'm able to do this. To me, it's just a tragedy that you don't have 100 million viewers, and you really deserve it, and I hope this will come about in the future.
What a wonderful thing to say, and I think we're on our way. Let's go ahead and take our first call this segment from, hello, Tom from Michigan.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you tonight?
Well, I'm real good. I'd like to say 2 things here real quick. It's a pleasure to talk to Mr. Palmer, and also, Peter, it is true you are the best interviewer in golf today. My question for Mr. Player, I noticed
you call me Mr. Player now.
A little earlier.
Mr. Palmer.
He changed his mind very quickly.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. We built the same.
I noticed you said earlier about equipment today as compared to when you were younger and playing. Do you think a person, if people were forced to play with forged clubs, forged irons, and wooden clubs all the time today, that they would be better ball strikers than they are today?
Well, I can tell you this, that if you had to go back to the clubs that we used to play with a long, long time ago, then you'd find out who the best player is. It would definitely separate a lot of the fields. Maybe you would have a superstar right now, because what it did, it required greater shot making. All this great equipment has brought a lot of players together, whereas when you had that kind of equipment we played with, the people who were the best really excelled and came to the fore. There's no question about that. Jack Nicklaus and Arnold and all the guys agree on what I've said there.
Very quickly, we think of everybody that you played with over the years. If they had a one-club tournament with a 6-iron, who wins it?
Trevino.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and talk to Brent. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Player. Peter, you have a great show. Keep it up. Mr. Player, you seem to have a great respect for Ben Hogan. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your relationship with Mr. Hogan over the years and how he has affected your career.
Well, Ben Hogan was a man that faced up to tremendous adversity in his life, and you can't help but admire a man who's struggled with adversity. I played my first U.S. Open ever at Southern Hills in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1958. My first U.S. Open, and who do I play with? The first 36 holes, the great Ben Hogan. Now, I, always sized up and looked at him as the same size as me, and, I wondered if, I could be this champion being the same size. Anyway, he didn't say many words. He might not have said 4 words in the 36 holes. It was good morning and thank you for the game. He was a very well-mannered man on the golf course. Anyway, I was sitting in the locker room, very hot, and his locker was here and mine was here, and the next thing I felt this tap on my shoulder, and I turned around and his face was right here. They called him the Hawk because he had eyes just like a hawk. And he said to me, son, he says, you're going to be a great player. Well, that meant so much to me. You can imagine this young boy playing in his first US Open with Ben Hogan. It meant so much. And he said to me, do you practice hard? I said, yes. He says, well, double it. And he got up and walked and went to the dining room to have his sandwich.
What a great story. And, of course, the two of you both ended up with 9 major championships.
You don't count the senior major championships?
No, we're going to argue about that as soon as we come back. We're going to take a short break. We will be right back with Gary Player right after this. Yes, I want to pick a fight with you on that. I had asked them to put 160 victories down, knowing that the win in Kentucky was the 159th, but I figured you probably did enter that Antarctica Polar Cap Open Closed Invitational Classic. Let's go ahead and talk.
Thank you.
Who's our first caller? Who? Hello, Jerry.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi, Peter. I'd just like to say that you're an inspiration to me, and you've helped me a lot with my golf game. And
that scares me when I can help someone with their golf game.
And Mr. Player, I'd just like to say you're an inspiration to me also, and to golfers all around the world.
Thank you.
My question has to do with qualifying school. I would like to know what kind of outlook you should have going into qualifying school. I'm a 17-year-old high school player, and I was wondering, like, what should your attitude be going into qualifying school?
Well, first of all, I don't believe in an all-exempt tour of 125 players being exempt. I'm very much on the young people's side because I went through the exact same kind of thinking and difficulties that you going, maybe in a different way, though. You see, there should be no more than 40 people exempt. There should be the good American free enterprise system that young guys should be able to go there and pre-qualify and get into that tournament irrespective of how much they pay. 125 all-exempt tour does not breed winners and does not breed superstars as we're seeing it's happening right here in front of our eyes right now. Going into the school, attitude. Attitude is one of the most important things in your life. And only you can do that. You see, you have the right to change it for the better or for the worst. And so you've got to have the right attitude, work on that. Of course, you've got to have talent. But if you want my advice, 70% of shots, this is what we advertise in our golf equipment company. 70% of shots in golf are played from 100 yards inwards. It's not the long drives that win tournaments. John Daly outdrives Corey Pavin by 60, 70 meters. But Corey Pavin beats him more times than John Daly beats him. There's a good example. Work on your short game and have the right attitude.
Let's give him one quick example of attitude and strength of mind. Tell Jerry, who just was on the phone with us briefly, the story about seeing your name on the U.S. Open trophy on the Wednesday before the tournament began, that of course you won 4 days later in 1965.
The U.S. Open?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, every day. I went there very early, thanks to Jack Nicklaus, who said to me, forget about the tournament before the U.S. Open. Come and practice with me the week before the Open, which I'm so pleased I did. And I went down to St. Louis at Belle Reve and practiced. And then Nicklaus went to go back home, and I stayed on there. And I really lived on my own like a monk. And I really sort of had this reverie. I was brainwashing myself I was going to win. I was setting myself up with the mind. It was the greatest self-hypnosis I'd ever done. And every day I went by the scoreboard, I could see the scoreboard there, and Ken Venturi's name was the last name before mine in gold letters. The others had faded a little bit. And I stood there like this every morning, and I saw Gary Player written in gold, strong and bold, like Ken Venturi's. And I did this every day. Honestly, I cannot emphasize the strength of the mind in sports. As I say, I'm coming back to it. We haven't scratched the surface.
You have. Let's talk to Steve in Indiana. How are you tonight?
Hello?
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Peter. Mr. Player, I have two sons who are high school golfers now. They're 14 and 16. Wondered what you might tell them to work on to better their games, to possibly play college golf and maybe even farther.
Well, I think that they've got to play golf in the right spirit. They've got to be very competitive, but they've got to be well-mannered. And let's see a good dress code come back with young guys into golf. I think that's essential. And to have respect for their fellow competitors, try and win and be a great and a fierce competitor. But when the other man beats you, take your hat off. Did you see Ben Hogan here way back in 1953? He won the Masters. People applauded. He took his hat off the old-fashioned way. Isn't it nice when people applaud that they appreciate good manners? Manners maketh a man. Tell your young guys that. I'm sure you have. Tell them to practice hard. Make them realize how lucky they are to have been born in the United States of America. You live in a land of milk and honey. Make them realize that.
We're going to be right back with one of the great men in the history of golf right after this. If you have questions or comments about Golf Talk Live you'd like to share with us, please send them along to us at Golf Talk Live, 7580 Commerce Center Drive, Orlando, Florida, 32819. For a fellow who's always had incredible resolve and strength of mind, I remember in 1973, you had a down period, I think, in terms of your attitude towards the game. You were thinking briefly of not playing. You played with Christy O'Connor in the British Open, and two things happened. He inspired you, and he made you feel that you needed to change something in your swing that had always been awry. Tell me about that.
It was a combination of several things, Peter. First of all, the best golfer I ever saw in my life was Sam Snead. Christy O'Connor was the most natural golfer I ever saw in my life. Not necessarily the best scorer, as I say. Nicholas was the best scorer. But I was playing and I wasn't very happy because I was drawing the ball too much, and I had a very closed position at the top of the backswing, and I just wasn't happy with my backswing. And I watched Christy O'Connor, the way he took the club back. And that was a great help to me in changing my backswing. And the other thing is that I think that, you know, we are given tests in our life to see whether we can accept that adversity. And I think the message came through to me, look, you've got to suffer a little bit too, you know. You cannot just win major championships all the time. You've got to have a little bit of taste of vinegar, not just honey all the time. And I think that's a very good thing, because then I actually said thank you for the difficulty that I was encountering. You can't always say thank you for the great things. Bernard Shaw so aptly said, complete happiness on earth would be eternal hell. And think about that. That really would be. So, you know, it's all here to test us. You go through these trials and errors, and I think that it's a great thing. This is the great thing about golf. It's always a challenge. If it doesn't keep you humble, nothing will keep you humble in this world, because this game is the toughest of them all.
What advice would you give to young people about following your dream, no matter how high or unreachable it appears to be?
Well, first of all, you have to be a realist. You have to be a realist. And you can't be a dreamer. There are people that are doers, and there are people that are dreamers. And the people that are doers dedicate themselves what I call sincerely. The dreamers do it 50% of the time. I would say to a young man today, don't even think about being a professional unless you can go along and beat all those amateurs. If you cannot win amateur tournaments, you're sure not going to win professional golf tournaments. So take it step by step. Competition in numbers, not necessarily in quality. Competition in numbers is far fiercer than it's ever been. The best players I ever saw lived 60 years ago. Ben Hogan, Sam Snead, and Byron Nelson. What would have happened if you gave them these equipment and these golf courses? Heaven knows.
What would it mean to you to be able to walk down the 18th green to the 18th green at St. Andrews for a victory before your career is over? I say it's the only gap in it.
Well, I did have a second at St. Andrews, and I do know this, that, you know, I've always said the only person that knows you finished second is your wife and your dog. But, you know, if you can't have the best, the second best is not too bad. But, you know, you cannot have everything. I've had every bit of success that any man could ever wish to have all around the world. How can I ever say, well, if only I'd won at St. Andrews or won there? I've got no sorrows, no regrets. I'm 100% satisfied. When I die, man, I can be happy that I've achieved everything I wanted to.
Well, our viewers are more than satisfied that you were with us tonight. And looking at your record, it was the only thing I could find a place you hadn't won anywhere, including Whack Whack Manila. Thank you so much for being here. Great to see you again. Best of everything this year. Thank you, everybody. Good night.